Deep in Alabama's Tennessee River Valley, where music legends are born, one sound engineer vanished into the humid night. At 3:47 a.m. on October 12, 2021, studio intern Callie Morrison pushed open the heavy oak door to control room A at the legendary Shoals Sound Studios. She expected to find Tommy Ray Hutchins hunched over the massive SE console, fine-tuning the final mix for rock band Broken Compass's upcoming album. Instead, she discovered an empty leather chair still warm to the touch, headphones draped over the armrest, and every piece of equipment still humming with power. The mixing board's 48 channels glowed with activity. Faders remained positioned exactly as Tommy had set them hours earlier, with the lead vocal track pushed slightly forward and a subtle reverb tail bleeding through the monitors. A half-empty cup of black coffee sat beside a legal pad covered in Tommy's meticulous handwriting, frequency notations, timing marks, and channel assignments written in his distinctive engineer's shorthand. The multi-track recorder continued rolling, capturing silence where Tommy's expert touch should have been guiding the session to completion. Shoals Sound Studios occupies hallowed ground in American music history. Built in 1969 on the banks of the Tennessee River in northwestern Alabama, the studio helped create what the industry calls the Shoals sound, a distinctive blend of Southern soul, rock, and rhythm that attracted legends like Aretha Franklin, the Rolling Stones, and Paul Simon. The building itself sits on a former ferry landing, where the Tennessee River makes a sweeping bend toward Wilson Dam. Local musicians joke that something in the river water makes the music here sound different, more alive somehow. Tommy Ray Hutchins understood that magic better than most. At 57 years old, he had spent 3 decades behind Shoals mixing boards, working with everyone from emerging country artists to Grammy-winning rock bands. His ears were considered among the finest in the business, capable of detecting the slightest phase issue or hearing a single instrument buried in a dense mix. Engineers from Nashville and Los Angeles regularly sought his expertise for projects requiring the classic Shoals treatment. Born and raised in nearby Sheffield, Alabama, Tommy never wanted to work anywhere else. He started as a teenager sweeping floors and winding cables, learning the craft from the studio's founders. By the 1990s, he had become the facility's senior engineer, trusted with the most important projects and highest-profile artists. His personal touch could be heard on dozens of platinum albums, though he rarely sought credit or recognition. When Callie called Tommy's cell phone that morning, it went straight to voicemail. She checked the studio's parking lot and found his 2018 Ford F-150, still occupying its usual spot near the loading dock, keys sitting on the dashboard. Tommy's leather jacket hung on its customary hook beside the control room door. His toolkit, a collection of specialized audio equipment he'd assembled over decades, remained untouched on the equipment rack. Colbert County Sheriff's Deputy Ray Morrison arrived at 4:23 a.m., responding to Callie's call about a missing person. Morrison, a 20-year veteran of rural law enforcement, had never investigated a disappearance at a recording studio. He treated the control room as a potential crime scene, photographing the console settings and bagging Tommy's coffee cup and notepad as evidence. The studio was cordoned off with yellow tape, halting what should have been the final day of a $200,000 recording project. By dawn, questions had begun mounting. Tommy was known for his reliability and professional dedication, the kind of engineer who would never abandon a session, especially not in the critical final mixing phase. The Broken Compass album represented months of work and significant financial investment from their record label. Tommy had been personally involved in every aspect of the production, from initial tracking to final mastering preparations. More puzzling was the timing. According to studio logs, Tommy had been working alone since 9:30 p.m., after the band members had departed for their hotel in nearby Florence. Security guard Earl Patterson reported seeing Tommy in control room A during his midnight rounds, apparently focused and working normally. The next confirmed sighting was Callie's discovery of the empty room nearly 4 hours later. What could make an experienced engineer abandon a multi-million-dollar recording session mid-mix? The question hung in the morning air like river fog as investigators began trying to piece together Tommy Ray Hutchins' final hours at the place he had called home for 30 years. The recording session for Broken Compass's third album had been scheduled as a 5-day intensive at Shoals Sound Studios, beginning on October 8, 2021. The Nashville-based rock band had specifically requested Tommy Ray Hutchins as their engineer, having heard his work on other projects that captured the raw, organic sound they were pursuing. Lead guitarist and primary songwriter Marcus Webb later told investigators that working with Tommy had been a dream come true for the band. Broken Compass consisted of 4 members in their late 20s, all veterans of the Nashville music scene. Marcus Webb handled lead guitar and vocals. His girlfriend Sarah Chen played bass. Drummer Jake Morrison provided the rhythm backbone, and keyboardist David Liu added atmospheric textures. They had achieved moderate success with their previous albums, but were hoping the Shoals sessions would elevate their sound to the next level. On the evening of October 11th, the band had completed their final overdub session around 9:30 p.m. According to Marcus Webb's statement to sheriff's deputies, the group was exhausted but satisfied with their performances. Tommy was excited about the mixes, Webb recalled. He kept saying this was some of his best work, that the songs had this energy he hadn't heard in years. He seemed really passionate about getting the final mix perfect. The band members returned to their rooms at the Hampton Inn in Florence, leaving Tommy alone to work through the night on final mixing duties. This arrangement was typical for professional recording sessions. Engineers often preferred working alone during the critical mixing phase, without artists looking over their shoulders and offering suggestions. Security guard Earl Patterson, a 62-year-old retired factory worker, had been providing overnight security for the studio complex since 2018. His routine included hourly walks through the building, checking doors and ensuring all equipment was secure. However, as investigators would later discover, Patterson's logbook entries from that night did not tell the complete story. According to Patterson's initial reports, he observed Tommy in control room during his 10 p.m., 11 p.m., and midnight rounds. He was in his element, Patterson later told investigators. Had those big headphones on, moving faders up and down, nodding his head to the music. Everything looked normal to me. Patterson noted that Tommy acknowledged him with a brief wave during each check-in, but seemed focused on his work. The security guard's 1 a.m. round proved more unusual. Patterson reported finding Tommy standing in the studio's main tracking room, apparently listening to playback through the room's monitor speakers. He was just standing there in the middle of the room with his eyes closed, Patterson recalled. I asked if everything was okay, and he said he was checking the stereo image, whatever that means. Said he wanted to hear how the mix would sound to someone sitting in the audience. But Patterson would later admit under questioning that he had fallen asleep in his vehicle around midnight and had not actually conducted all the security rounds he had initially claimed. His patrol logs, investigators discovered, had been falsified to cover the gap in his surveillance. The discovery of unusual audio recordings would prove most intriguing to investigators. During the initial evidence collection, Deputy Morrison powered down the multitrack recorder and preserved the session files exactly as Tommy had left them. When the band's manager hired an independent engineer to review the recordings, they found something unexpected. The final session files contained multiple tracks that none of the band members remembered recording. Mixed low in the background of several songs were what appeared to be additional vocal harmonies. Not Sarah Chen's recognizable voice, but a deeper, more mature vocal tone that seemed to complement the existing arrangements. The mysterious vocals appeared to have been recorded through the studio's vintage Neumann U47 microphone, the same mic used for lead vocals throughout the project. Marcus Webb's reaction to hearing these phantom tracks was immediate and unsettling. That's not any of us singing, he insisted during a follow-up interview with investigators. And Tommy never mentioned recording any additional vocals. He was very methodical about documenting every overdub, every punch-in, everything we did. These tracks aren't in his session notes anywhere. More puzzling still, the mysterious vocal tracks seemed to exhibit an intimate knowledge of the song's structures and chord progressions. Rather than random humming or improvised melodies, the phantom vocals provided sophisticated harmonic support that enhanced the overall arrangements. It was the work of someone who understood the music deeply, or had been present during the entire recording process. Even more disturbing were the timestamps embedded in the digital audio files. The mysterious vocal tracks appeared to have been recorded between 2:15 a.m. and 2:47 a.m. on October 12th, a time when, according to all available evidence, Tommy Ray Hutchins was supposedly alone in the studio. When confronted with this timeline, the band members began reconsidering their recollections of the evening. Under gentle questioning from investigators, Sarah Chan admitted to feeling weird vibes during the final day of recording. The studio felt different somehow, she explained. Like someone else was there with us, even when it was just the four of us and Tommy. As the investigation deepened, one question would continue to haunt everyone involved. If Tommy was working alone during those crucial early morning hours, who was responsible for the mysterious vocal performances captured during his final session at Shoals Sound Studios? Why do witness accounts of the evening's events contain unexplained gaps in time? The answers, if they existed, remained as elusive as Tommy himself. Thomas Raymond Hutchins had lived his entire life within a 20-mile radius of Shoals Sound Studios. Born in Sheffield, Alabama in 1967, he grew up listening to his father's collection of records featuring the legendary Shoals rhythm section. By age 16, Tommy was hanging around the studio after school, hoping to learn the trade that had made his hometown famous throughout the music world. Rick Hall, founder of the nearby Fame Studios, took notice of the persistent teenager and offered him weekend work cleaning equipment and organizing cable runs. Tommy's natural ear for audio became apparent within months. Senior engineers began trusting him with basic recording tasks, and by his early 20s, he had developed a reputation for understanding the subtle acoustics that made Shoals recording sound distinctive. Tommy's career coincided with the golden age of the Shoals sound. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, he worked alongside music legends, learning techniques that couldn't be taught in any audio engineering program. He understood how to capture the natural reverb of the studio's main room, how to position microphones to take advantage of the building's unique acoustic properties, and most importantly, how to serve the music rather than showcase his technical skills. Colleagues described Tommy as intensely dedicated but never egotistical. Unlike many engineers who sought to put their stamp on every recording, Tommy preferred to remain invisible, allowing the artist's performances to shine through his mixes. Tommy was like a translator, explained veteran producer Bill Matthews, who had worked with him on dozens of projects. He could take what an artist was feeling and make it come through the speakers exactly the way they imagined it. But in the months leading up to his disappearance, those closest to Tommy noticed troubling changes in his behavior. His divorce from wife Jennifer had been finalized in June 2021, ending a 20-year marriage that had produced 2 teenage children. The custody arrangement required substantial monthly support payments that strained Tommy's finances, despite his reputation and steady work. Studio manager Patricia Fleming recalled Tommy working longer hours throughout the summer of 2021, taking on additional projects to meet his financial obligations. He was pushing himself harder than I'd ever seen, Fleming later told investigators. Sometimes he'd be here until 3 or 4 a.m., then show up again at 10 a.m. for the next session. I was worried about him burning out. More concerning were reports from fellow engineers about Tommy's increasingly odd behavior during recording sessions. Sound engineer Mike Garrett, who had worked alongside Tommy for 15 years, described incidents where Tommy claimed to hear bleed-through from other sessions, audio tracks that shouldn't have been present in the mix. He'd stop in the middle of mixing and ask if I heard the saxophone, Garrett explained in his statement to sheriff deputies. But there was no saxophone on the tracks we were working with. He'd spend 20 minutes trying to locate the source of sounds that the rest of us couldn't hear. It was starting to affect his work. The phenomenon appeared to worsen throughout September 2021. During a session with a Memphis blues band, Tommy reportedly became convinced that he was hearing residual audio from a 1970s Aretha Franklin recording session. He spent hours adjusting EQ settings and checking cable connections, insisting that Franklin's voice was somehow bleeding through the studio's electrical system. Tommy's personal notebooks, discovered in his home office after his disappearance, revealed the depth of his growing obsession with these phantom audio experiences. Page after page contained detailed frequency analysis charts, diagrams of the studio's electrical systems, and theories about electromagnetic interference patterns. His handwriting became increasingly erratic as the entries progressed through late summer and early fall. One particularly disturbing notebook entry, dated September 28, 2021, read, "The voices are getting stronger, not interference, something else. The building remembers every song, every voice that passed through these walls. Sometimes late at night I can hear them all layered together like an infinite multi-track recording. Is this what going crazy with the studio has been trying to tell me?" Tommy's ex-wife Jennifer provided additional context about his mental state during their final conversations. He was obsessed with the idea that digital recording was somehow inferior to the analog recordings made in the studio's early days, she told investigators. He thought modern technology was missing some essential element, some spiritual component that the old equipment could capture. Jennifer also revealed that Tommy had been researching the studio's history more intensively than ever before. He spent hours in the Florence Lauderdale Public Library, reviewing newspaper archives and conducting informal interviews with retired musicians who had worked at Muscle Shoals during its heyday. He was looking for something, Jennifer recalled. Some explanation for why the music recorded there sounded different from anywhere else. Dr. Jennifer Coleman, a psychiatrist who specializes in work-related stress disorders, reviewed Tommy's notebook entries at the request of investigators. While she couldn't provide a definitive diagnosis without having examined Tommy personally, Coleman noted several concerning patterns. The entries suggest someone experiencing auditory hallucinations, possibly related to extreme fatigue and emotional stress, she explained. The combination of financial pressure, recent divorce, and professional perfectionism could have contributed to a psychological break. But Tommy's colleagues weren't entirely convinced by the mental breakdown theory. Tommy was under pressure, sure, said longtime friend and fellow engineer Danny Torres, but his ears were still perfect. If anything, his mixes were getting better, more sophisticated. Whatever he was hearing, it wasn't hurting his work, it was inspiring it. As investigators would soon discover, Tommy's claims about phantom audio bleeding through the studio walls might not have been the product of a deteriorating mind. The building's history held secrets that could potentially explain his mysterious experiences, or make them even more inexplicable. The land occupied by Muscle Shoals Sound Studios holds layers of history that extend far beyond its musical legacy. Before the recording facility was built in 1969, the site served as a ferry landing on the Tennessee River, where travelers and cargo crossed the water for more than a century. Local historians point out that the studio's main tracking room sits directly above the stone foundation of the original ferry operator's house, built in the 1840s by Irish immigrants seeking opportunity in the Tennessee Valley. The ferry operation continued until the completion of Wilson Dam in 1925, part of the Tennessee Valley Authority's ambitious plan to harness the river's power for electricity generation. The massive concrete structure, visible from the studio's parking lot, created the reservoir system that defines the modern Tennessee River. But old-timers in the area remember stories about the ferry landing, tales of travelers who arrived but were never recorded as departing, and ferry operators who reported strange voices carrying across the water on still nights. David Hood, bass player for the legendary Muscle Shoals rhythm section and co-founder of the studio, recalled unusual incidents from the facility's earliest days. "We knew there was something special about that location from the moment we started recording," Hood explained during a 2019 interview for a music documentary. But along with the magic came some things that were harder to explain. Studio logs from the 1970s, preserved in the facility's archives, document recurring equipment malfunctions that technicians could never fully explain. Magnetic tape machines would spontaneously start recording during overnight hours, when the building was supposed to be empty. Mixing board channels would activate without human input, often on tracks that hadn't been used during recent sessions. Security guards reported hearing playback of recorded music at volumes that should have been audible throughout the building, yet investigation would reveal all equipment powered down. One of the most documented incidents occurred in March 1974, during sessions for a Paul Simon album Dancha. According to engineer Jerry Masters' incident report, filed with studio management, the recording equipment captured what appeared to be a full gospel choir, performing during a 3 a.m. break in the session. The voices were crystal clear, Masters wrote. 4-part harmony, professional quality performance. But the studio was locked and empty, except for me. The mysterious gospel performance was preserved on analog tape, though subsequent analysis could never determine its source. Audio engineer Bob Weston, who reviewed the tapes in 1975, described the Phantom Choir as the most beautiful singing I've ever heard, but completely impossible given the circumstances. Richard Peebles, who worked as a maintenance supervisor at the studio from 1978 to 1995, documented dozens of similar occurrences in his personal diary. Peebles, now 78 and living in a Florence retirement community, agreed to discuss his experiences with investigators following Tommy's disappearance. It wasn't scary, exactly, Peebles explained during his interview with Colbert County deputies. More like the building was trying to participate in the music-making process. Sometimes I'd come in early and find the piano bench adjusted, or microphones repositioned in ways that actually improve the sound, as if someone with professional knowledge had been working overnight. Peebles' most vivid memory involved a 1982 session with a young country artist whose name he couldn't recall. I was doing routine maintenance on the air conditioning system around 2 a.m. when I heard the most incredible steel guitar playing coming from the main room, he recalled. But when I investigated, I found all the instruments exactly where they'd been left, and no one else in the building. Modern investigation into these phenomena has focused on the area's unique electromagnetic environment. The Tennessee Valley Authority's electrical infrastructure creates a complex grid of high-voltage transmission lines throughout the region. Dr. Michael Chen, an electrical engineering professor at the University of Alabama, studied the studio's power systems in 2018 as part of a research project on electromagnetic interference in professional audio facilities. The combination of TVA power lines, the river's mineral content, and the limestone bedrock creates conditions that could theoretically cause unusual electromagnetic effects, Dr. Chen explained in his published findings. Audio equipment is particularly sensitive to these types of environmental factors, and vintage analog gear even more so. However, Dr. Chen's analysis couldn't account for the sophisticated musical content of the Phantom recordings. Electromagnetic interference typically produces noise, static, or random signals, he noted. The organized, harmonically complex audio described in these reports doesn't fit any known interference patterns. Geological surveys of the studio site have revealed additional interesting features. The building sits atop a limestone cave system that extends beneath much of the Tennessee River Valley. These natural chambers could theoretically create acoustic effects that might amplify or distort sound in unexpected ways. Speleologist Dr. Sarah Martinez, who mapped the underground formations in 2020, suggested that the cave system might act as a natural resonating chamber. Sound waves could potentially travel through these limestone passages and emerge at unexpected locations, Dr. Martinez theorized. It's possible that audio recorded in the studio could be naturally amplified and redirected through the cave system, creating the illusion of phantom performances. Yet, this geological explanation also falls short of accounting for the timing and content of the mysterious recordings. The phantom audio typically occurs during overnight hours when no official recording sessions are taking place, and often features musical arrangements that complement whatever project is currently being recorded at the studio. Former studio owner Jimmy Johnson, who co-founded Muscle Shoals Sound with David Hood, offered a different perspective on the building's unusual characteristics. Some places are just special, Johnson reflected during a recent interview. Toddy, you can analyze the electronics and the geology all you want, but there's something about that location that transcends normal explanations. Maybe Tommy finally tapped into whatever that is. As investigators delved deeper into Tommy's final months, they would discover that his growing obsession with the studio's phantom audio phenomena was connected to much more than supernatural curiosity. The electromagnetic anomalies he had been documenting might have uncovered activities that certain parties were desperate to keep hidden. 3 weeks into the investigation, Detective Ray Morrison from the Colbert County Sheriff's Department made a discovery that shifted the entire focus of the case. While examining Tommy Ray Hutchins' personal computer system at his rental house on Avalon Avenue, Morrison uncovered a series of encrypted files that revealed the true scope of Tommy's involvement in the music industry's most guarded secrets. The files, once decoded by a forensics specialist from Birmingham, contained detailed catalogs of unreleased master recordings stored in the Shoals Sound Studio's vault. These weren't just rough demos or discarded takes. According to music industry appraiser Janet Holbrook, who was brought in to assess the materials, some of these recordings represented potential gold mines. Lost tracks by legendary artists, alternate versions of hit songs, and complete unreleased albums that could be worth millions to collectors and record labels alike. Tommy had access to everything, explained former studio manager Bill Crawford in a September 2021 interview. 30 years in that building. He knew where every tape was stored, every backup drive, every piece of music that never saw the light of day. He was like a walk-in library of Muscle Shoals history. But Tommy's knowledge had recently put him at odds with powerful figures in the industry. Court documents filed in Nashville revealed an ongoing legal battle between the current studio owners and Atlantic Records over the rights to distribute certain archived materials. Tommy had been scheduled to testify as a key witness in the case, providing technical documentation about the provenance and condition of disputed recordings. Record label executive Michael Petrosky had flown to Muscle Shoals twice in the months before Tommy's disappearance, according to rental car records and hotel registrations obtained by investigators. Local restaurant staff at Riccatoni's Italian Grill confirmed seeing Petrosky dining with Tommy on at least one occasion, describing their conversation as heated and definitely business-related. "They weren't talking about the weather," recalled server Amy Donaldson. The older man, Tommy, looked stressed out. He kept checking his phone and glancing around like he was worried someone was listening in. The investigation took another troubling turn when investigators discovered that several high-value backup drives had gone missing from the studio's climate-controlled vault. The theft had occurred sometime in the 2 weeks before Tommy's disappearance, but studio management had not reported it to police, claiming they were conducting an internal investigation first. Studio owner Patricia Fleming finally admitted to detectives that the missing drives contained master recordings from sessions by major artists who had recorded at Muscle Shoals during the 1970s and 1980s. The estimated value of the stolen material exceeded 2/3 million yen, making this potentially one of the most significant music piracy cases in Alabama history. Tommy was the only person besides myself with access to that vault, Fleming told investigators during a recorded interview on November 8, 2021. He had the codes, he had the keys, he knew the security system inside and out. If those drives are gone, he's the only one who could have taken them. But Tommy's colleagues painted a different picture. Sound engineer Maria Santos, who had worked alongside Tommy for 15 years, insisted that he would never steal from the studio that had been his life's work. Tommy lived and breathed that place, Santos stated in her witness testimony. He used to joke that when he died, they should just bury him in studio because that's where his soul was anyway. The idea that he would rob the vault and run off like some kind of thief, it just doesn't fit the man I knew. The encrypted files on Tommy's computer also revealed another layer of complexity. Hidden among the inventory lists were detailed notes about electromagnetic anomalies in the studio's recording equipment. Tommy had been documenting unusual signal patterns and unexplained audio artifacts for over 2 years, maintaining meticulous logs of incidents that other staff members had dismissed as equipment failures. Dr. Rebecca Walsh, an acoustic engineer from the University of Alabama, reviewed Tommy's notes and found them surprisingly sophisticated. He was essentially conducting his own scientific study of the building's electromagnetic environment, Walsh explained. His measurements show consistent anomalies in the low-frequency range that align with the building's proximity to the Tennessee Valley Authority's power infrastructure. These technical investigations may have uncovered something that certain parties preferred to remain hidden. Tommy's notes suggested he believed the electromagnetic interference was being deliberately generated, possibly to mask unauthorized recording or transmission activities within the studio complex. One particularly intriguing entry from Tommy's files, dated August 15, 2021, described what he termed scheduled interference patterns. According to his documentation, the phantom audio phenomena occurred with suspicious regularity, often coinciding with late-night visits to the studio by individuals who weren't part of any official recording sessions. "Someone is using our facility for unauthorized purposes," Tommy had written. "The interference isn't random. It's covering something up. The question is what, and who's behind it?" As investigators traced the web of financial and professional relationships surrounding Tommy, they discovered a pattern of increasing pressure from multiple directions. The custody battle with his ex-wife required substantial monthly payments. The record label lawsuit threatened to expose industry practices that could damage reputations and careers. And his growing documentation of the studio's electromagnetic anomalies may have put him on a collision course with individuals who had reasons to keep certain activities secret. Music industry insider David Torres, who had worked as a session musician at Shoals for over 20 years, offered his perspective on the pressures facing someone in Tommy's position. "The music business is built on secrets," Torres explained during his interview with investigators. "Who really played on what album? Where certain recordings are stored? Which artists owe money to whom?" Tommy knew all of it, and that kind of knowledge makes you valuable or dangerous. The question remained whether Tommy had been overwhelmed by these converging pressures and chosen to disappear with valuable stolen property, or whether his knowledge had made him a target for elimination. As investigators would soon discover, the truth might be more complex than either simple explanation could account for. On November 12, 2021, nearly 4 months after Tommy Ray Hutchins' disappearance, security consultant David Kim made a discovery that forced investigators to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the case. While conducting a thorough review of the studio's surveillance system, Kim uncovered footage from a camera angle that had initially been overlooked during the first sweep of evidence. The footage, captured by a motion-activated camera positioned near the studio's rear exit, showed Tommy leaving the Shoals Sound Studios building at exactly 2:15 a.m. on the night he vanished. He was walking calmly, carrying a small duffel bag, and appeared to be alone. Most significantly, he was moving under his own power with no signs of distress or coercion. "This changes everything," admitted Detective Ray Morrison during a press briefing held at the Colbert County Courthouse. "We'd been operating under the assumption that something happened to Tommy inside the studio. This footage clearly shows him leaving the building alive and apparently unharmed." The revelation immediately triggered a massive search operation along the Tennessee River. Coast Guard teams from the Huntsville district deployed sonar equipment to scan the waters between Wilson Dam and the studio complex. Tennessee Wildlife Resources officers coordinated with volunteers to search the riverbanks and surrounding wetlands, focusing on areas where someone might dispose of evidence or where an accident could have occurred. For 5 days, dive teams worked in sections of the Tennessee River where the current runs deepest, and the water reaches temperatures that could preserve or destroy evidence depending on seasonal conditions. They found nothing. No clothing. No personal effects. No sign that Tommy had ever been near the water. Meanwhile, forensic audio specialist Jennifer Blackwood was conducting a frame-by-frame analysis of the final recording session that had been captured on the studio's multi-track equipment. What she discovered was perhaps more disturbing than anything investigators had uncovered so far. The recording contains vocal tracks that were definitely not performed by anyone in the room that night, Blackwood reported to investigators on November 18th. These are layered harmonies, background vocals, even what sounds like spoken word passages. The audio analysis confirms that these tracks were recorded during the exact time window when Tommy claimed to be working alone. The mysterious vocal tracks appeared to have been recorded between 2:15 a.m. and 2:47 a.m. and the same time frame when security footage showed Tommy leaving the building. Audio analysis revealed that the voices were male, middle-aged, and spoke with accents consistent with the North Alabama region. But none of the Broken Compass band members recognized the voices, and studio staff insisted no other musicians had been present during the overnight session. Confronted with this evidence, the band members finally admitted they had not been entirely truthful in their original statements to police. Lead guitarist Marcus Webb revealed that they had all briefly left the studio around 1:30 a.m. to smoke marijuana in the parking lot, leaving Tommy alone with the recording equipment for approximately 25 minutes. "We didn't want to admit to drug use during a police investigation," Webb explained during a follow-up interview conducted at the Florence Police Department. "But Tommy was still there when we went outside, and he was still there when we came back in. We figured it didn't matter because nothing happened while we were gone." But something had happened. During that 25-minute window, someone had recorded multiple vocal tracks using the studio's professional equipment. The question was whether Tommy had been working with an unknown collaborator, or whether someone else had gained access to the building during the band's absence. Security guard Earl Patterson's timeline also came under renewed scrutiny. Patterson admitted under pressure that he had fallen asleep in his vehicle around midnight, and had not actually conducted the hourly security rounds he had initially claimed. His patrol logs, investigators discovered, had been falsified to cover the gap in his surveillance. "I've been working double shifts to make ends meet," Patterson told investigators. "I dozed off for maybe an hour and a half. When I woke up, everything looked normal. All the lights were on in the studio like usual. I didn't think anyone would know the difference." The admission meant that for a critical period between midnight and 2:15 a.m., there was no reliable witness to activity in or around the studio building. Anyone could have entered or left during that time without being observed. Studio owner Patricia Fleming was also forced to revise her statements when investigators discovered that the missing backup drives had been reported to her insurance company 3 days before she claimed to have discovered the theft. The insurance claim, filed through a Nashville-based firm that specialized in music industry coverage, listed the drive's contents in detail and estimated their replacement value at $2.30 million. "I was trying to handle it quietly," Fleming explained when confronted with the documentation. "The music industry runs on reputation and trust. If word got out that we had a security breach, it could have destroyed our business. I thought we could recover the drives and handle everything internally." As the investigation progressed through late 2021, a disturbing pattern emerged. Multiple witnesses had provided incomplete or misleading information about their activities during Tommy's final night at the studio. The security systems designed to protect the facility had multiple blind spots and failures. And the physical evidence, from phantom vocal recordings to missing backup drives, suggested a level of planning and coordination that went far beyond a simple missing person case. Most puzzling of all was the question of motive. If Tommy had planned to disappear, why abandon a recording session in the middle of the night? If someone had forced him to leave, why was there no evidence of coercion? And if he had stolen the backup drives himself, where had he gone? And what had he planned to do with millions of dollars worth of unreleased music? By the end of 2021, investigators found themselves with more questions than answers. Tommy had left the building alive, but had subsequently vanished without a trace. Unknown voices had been recorded during his final session, but no one could identify the speakers. Valuable materials had been stolen, but the timeline of the theft remained unclear. 3 years have passed since Tommy Ray Hutchins walked out of Shoals Sound Studios and vanished into the humid Alabama night. The investigation, officially classified as an ongoing missing person case, has generated thousands of pages of documentation, dozens of interviews, and multiple theories that continue to divide law enforcement, family members, and music industry insiders. Detective Ray Morrison, now retired from the Colbert County Sheriff's Department, maintains that Tommy orchestrated his own disappearance. "Everything points to a man under tremendous pressure who saw an opportunity and took it," Morrison explained during a December 23 interview at his home in Florence. "The stolen drives, the financial problems, the custody battle with his ex-wife. He had means, motive, and opportunity to start over somewhere else with enough money to disappear permanently." This theory suggests that Tommy spent months planning his exit, using his intimate knowledge of the studio's security systems and his access to valuable recordings to fund a new life. Supporters of this explanation point to the calm manner in which he was captured leaving the building, the precise timing that avoided security observation, and the fact that no evidence of foul play has ever been discovered. But Tommy's family and closest friends reject this explanation entirely. His sister, Carol Hutchins Bradley, has spent the past 3 years conducting her own investigation, hiring private detectives and consulting with missing persons advocates across the Southeast. Tommy was not a thief, Hutchins Bradley stated during a 2024 interview at her home in Tuscumbia. He was depressed about his divorce, yes, but he was fighting for custody of his daughter. He would never abandon Emma. Someone took him or something happened to him, but he didn't just walk away from his life. A third theory, favored by some in the music industry, suggests that Tommy discovered something about the unauthorized use of Shoals' legendary acoustics and became a target for elimination. The electromagnetic anomalies he had been documenting, combined with his access to archive materials, may have uncovered activities that certain parties were desperate to keep hidden. Audio engineer Maria Santos has become an advocate for this interpretation. Tommy was documenting things that other people wanted to ignore, Santos explained in a phone interview from her current position at a Nashville recording studio. He believes someone was using the building for unauthorized recording or transmission activities. If he was getting close to exposing something big, that would have made him very dangerous to very powerful people. The Tennessee River has been searched multiple times using increasingly sophisticated sonar and diving equipment, but it has yielded no trace of Tommy or the missing backup drives. Bloodhounds have tracked his scent to the studio's rear parking area, where the trail goes cold. Cell phone records show his device going offline at 2:47 a.m., approximately 30 minutes after the security footage captured him leaving the building. Perhaps most mysteriously, the audio phenomena that Tommy had been documenting continue to occur at the studio location. Current staff members report hearing phantom vocal tracks bleeding through walls during late-night sessions, electronic interference that seems to follow patterns rather than random equipment failure, and recording anomalies that defy technical explanation. It's gotten worse since Tommy disappeared, admitted current studio manager Kevin Walsh during a March 2024 interview. We've had 3 different acoustic engineers examine the building, and none of them can explain what's causing the interference. Some of the musicians who record here now refuse to work overnight sessions. The missing backup drives have never surfaced in underground music circles, despite a substantial reward offered by the insurance company. If Tommy did take them, he has never attempted to monetize their contents. If someone else stole them, they've remained remarkably disciplined in avoiding detection. Federal investigators briefly became involved in 2022 when the case was classified as potential interstate transportation of stolen property, but their inquiry was closed without charges after 6 months of investigation yielded no new leads. Tommy's daughter Emma, now 17, continues to believe her father is alive somewhere and will eventually return. His ex-wife, Jennifer Hutchins, has moved to Memphis and remarried, but maintains that Tommy would never have abandoned his parental responsibilities voluntarily. The Shoals sound studios continue to operate, though the building that housed Tommy's final session has been converted to equipment storage. Tour groups still visit the facility, drawn by its legendary history of recording hits by Aretha Franklin, the Rolling Stones, and dozens of other famous artists. Few visitors know about the sound engineer who vanished in the middle of what should have been just another night at one of music's most storied locations. On quiet evenings along the Tennessee River, when the wind carries sound differently and the electromagnetic fields shift with changing weather patterns, some locals claim they can still hear phantom music drifting from the direction of the old studio complex. Whether these sounds represent lingering echoes of decades of legendary recording sessions, unexplained atmospheric phenomena, or something more mysterious remains as unresolved as the fate of Tommy Ray Hutchins himself. The Midnight Conductor, as some have begun calling him, may have taken his final bow that humid October night. But the music and the mystery play on. What happened to Tommy Ray Hutchins remains one of the music industry's most enduring unsolved cases, a haunting reminder that even in places where legends are born, some stories have no ending.